Hundreds of passengers infected and dozens dead after a cruise set sail at the beginning of the pandemic.
The Ruby Princess docked in Australia in March, and health officials are being criticized for their response once passengers disembarked. Only on 5, for the first time, we're hearing from a Delray Beach woman who was on board.
And WPTV News Channel 5's Ryan Hughes examines what went wrong and who's being held responsible.
Reporting live from the fjords in New Zealand.
Diane Fish has set sail on board countless cruise ships, experiencing new adventures all around the world.
I decided a couple years ago that I'm going to start living my dream, which is to travel.
The Caribbean, Italy, Norway, but the chance to explore down under,
I touched kangaroos,
was near the top of her bucket list.
I wanted to see a real kangaroo in its environment.
The travel agent from Delray Beach spent 2 years planning a trip to Australia with a group of clients. Then they hopped on board the Ruby Princess for a 14-day cruise around New Zealand.
And this is cruising. We're just enjoying it.
But Fish's once-in-a-lifetime voyage left the port of Sydney on March 8th, just 3 days before the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus a pandemic and countries around the world were on heightened alert.
I didn't hear about people being sick. I mean, we went to happy hour every day. We enjoyed that.
Fish says it felt like a normal cruise, but Vicky Anzalatis with Shine Lawyers in Australia tells WPTV that's part of the problem.
There were clearly passengers within days of that cruise beginning that were displaying symptoms consistent with coronavirus. No one was told anything.
Shine Lawyer says the Ruby Princess has been linked to 28 deaths and about 900 infections. Now, more than 800 passengers have joined a class action lawsuit filed in July against Carnival Corporation and Princess Cruises, citing negligence. Anzalatis, who's part of the legal team representing those passengers, says the cruise line failed to warn everyone on board about the risks of a deadly virus.
Do you think that cruise should have ever left in the first place?
I don't think the cruise should have left in the first place, no. And that's part of our case.
With nearly 2,700 passengers on board, the Ruby stopped at several ports and tourists explored the towns. But as Australia enacted restrictions for the virus, the Ruby turned around for Sydney, cutting the journey short.
That particular cruise was the cause of COVID being spread not only to different parts of Australia, but the world.
Fish says all 10 people in her group tested positive, including her and her husband, after making the long trip home.
Flew out of Sydney through San Francisco, and then the rest went on to their destination, which was, we went to Philadelphia, we went to Fort Lauderdale, and up to Orlando.
A New South Wales government inquiry says health authorities made inexcusable and serious mistakes by allowing sick passengers to disembark. The inquiry also states NSW Health should have ensured cruise ships were aware of changes in protocol regarding COVID cases, essentially taking the blame off Princess Cruises. The cruise line would not comment on pending litigation, but in a statement says, quote, Princess Cruises has been sensitive to the difficulties the COVID-19 outbreak has caused to our guests and crew. Our response throughout this process has focused on the well-being of our guests and crew within the parameters dictated to us by the government agencies involved in the evolving medical understanding of this new illness. Fish is not part of the lawsuit and would like to see the cruise industry back up and running.
It's got to get fixed. It has to get fixed.
Ryan Hughes, WPTV News Channel 5.
The New South Wales Police Department still conducting its own investigation led by homicide detectives surrounding the docking and disembarkment of the Ruby Princess.